Hi, friends, and welcome to our latest edition of Keeping Up with the Jackrabbits. I'm Tyler Merriam, and today we turn our focus to a former student athlete who is blazing her own trail in this world, and we'll get into that with the pride of Pierre, former women's basketball player Katie Lingle. Katie, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Well, I am doing just fine. First, I want to take a step back here. Tell me about growing up in the Lingle household in Pierre and how competitive that was.
Oh man, it wasn't terribly competitive. My older sister and I definitely competed on different things, but I would say I didn't really come into my own as an athlete until I was like, in middle school, in high school, just because I was so tall and I was growing into my body. But I was always super competitive, and I think that's the thing that stood out. My dad was similar to me and my uncles. I've heard stories about them in Pierre. um, just very competitive all around.
Now, we listed you at 6 feet 2 during your time at SDSU. When did you hit the 6 foot mark? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. I was in seventh grade.
Wow.
So like that's the thing too, is like I've always been tall. I never really remembered having a growth spurt. Um, but it was more just, kind of coming into my body. But yeah, I remember seventh grade because I was just like, I hit 6 foot and I was so proud. Um, so yeah.
Was basketball always going to be the thing for you?
For sure. Just I think it was just because it was something that my dad could share with me, and I have really fond memories of him taking my older sister, my younger sister, and I to the YMCA on Saturday mornings, and we would shoot that left-handed hook shot over and over and over again. Just standing under the basket, he knew I was going to be probably be a center or at least something down around the rim, knowing that I was so tall. So we put in a lot of hours at the YMCA in Pierre.
And it is unique for a community the size of Pierre to have multiple Division I student athletes in a sport, although it's happened a couple of times. But
Yeah.
Steph Pollock coming through at the same time you did. Talk about your relationship with Steph.
So Steph and I are best friends. We've probably been best friends since we were seventh graders. And it is pretty unique and pretty special. And when I talk about her to my friends now, it's hard to explain our bond because it is so special to have someone that has gone through the college basketball experience with you, but is also from your hometown. So they know all the ins and outs of growing up in Pierre, and also just like grinding it out every single day with you on the basketball court. So yeah, we're best friends, and we've remained in like great contact. She's in Michigan now. I'm out in DC, but we were literally talking on the phone like 2 hours ago, just catching up.
What led you to South Dakota State?
I would say Coach Canagater had a huge influence on me. Coach Canagater was my high school basketball coach in Pierre. She, when I first got in contact with AJ, we had a conversation, and she was just so positive about the program and so positive about her own experience at South Dakota State because she had played there in the 90s. And I just remember being like so blown away by that. And also just my parents, you know, they let me make my own decision. But at the end of the day, they said, Katie, you can go check out other schools. You can, do this whole AAU thing and see where you end up. But at the end of the day, like, you're playing for a Division I program in your home state, and it's a place that we can watch you. We can come see the majority of your games. And as soon as my parents said that, it just kind of was like a no-brainer to me. And I'm so grateful that I did end up at South Dakota State.
How much pride do you take in the success of the program?
So much pride. Just in my office out here in DC, I feel like I'm known as like the South Dakota State girl because I'm just so obsessed, and I, watch every football game. I'm still watching the majority of the basketball games, and you know, um, you haven't gotten into this yet, but I work for the Senator Thune, and he's always stopping by my desk and being like, "So how did the Jacks do?" Or like, "Did you watch that game?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah," and that's something we talk about a lot. And there's a couple other Jackrabbits in the office, and another one on our team was just he always really loved South Dakota State basketball, but a couple of the other guys, they were into other things at South Dakota State when they went there. but now we all bond over basketball because I think I've made them fans just because of how excited I get about it.
Atta girl. That's what we like to
Yes.
hear, Lingle.
Yes.
Now, take me through this process, because when you were in college, your goal was not to work in Washington, D.C. You wanted to be a sports broadcaster.
Yeah, I think, okay, yes. So I actually did, when I first came into college, I thought about doing something a little more newsy, being in, the political realm of some sort. Maybe that was like being a political broadcaster. Just because I did not double major, but I also had a minor in poli-sci. So it was always an interest of mine. But, I had a teacher that kind of was like, you'd be a great sports broadcaster given that you play basketball and this is something that you're so into. So I kind of just focused in on that. But, poli-sci was always an interest to me. And it was always, I was usually coming into the locker room and stirring up some type of political debate, and people were like, Katie, we could care less. But, I probably was saying something. But, I did the whole sports broadcasting thing for about a year and a half at Midco, and that was great. And I had an awesome experience there, worked with some really great people. But, I was just kind of looking for something else. And, we had played Georgetown my senior year. I was out with a concussion, but I still got to come with the team. And the senator took us on a tour of the Capitol and, his office and everything. And he had a communications director, Andy Foberg, who had a similar background as me. She was a broadcast journalism major, and she also had a poli-sci major. And I was just like, okay, noted, you can do other things besides broadcasting. And so, after I'd spent some time at Midco, I thought about how Senator Thune had told us when we were in Washington, D.C., if anyone was interested in internships or anything else, like to let him know. And so that was always kind of in the back of my mind. So I reached out to Andy, and Andy had recently moved back to South Dakota, and now she is at South Dakota State. I guess all that to say, if it wasn't for South Dakota State, I definitely wouldn't be here. I'm just so grateful for the connections that I made while I was there.
And you have alluded to it, but give us the complete rundown. Working for Senator John Thune, what exactly are you doing? What is a typical week like? Obviously not right now, but when things were normal before the pandemic, what's a typical week like in the life of Katie Lingle?
So there is definitely no typical week in Washington, D.C., especially before the pandemic. I'd say things are probably a little more evened out during this pandemic. But I'm Senator Thune's press secretary. I handle a lot of the South Dakota media requests. So anytime, we're putting him on TV, I'm usually trying to handle that, or pitching him to get him on TV. I'm also handling press releases, so I'm drafting those up and sending them out. Basically, any bill that he's introducing or letter that he sends or media availability, I'll do a press release on that. And I'll also handle different interviews that come through, interview requests, whether that's state or national. That's the majority of it.
How are you doing right now?
It's tough given the severity of everything that's going on, and I definitely recognize that this is a really hard time for a lot of people, but, it hasn't been too bad for me personally. I'm very grateful for technology. I'm able to, work through my computer and at home. And, it's also letting me tap into some other things. I've been crafting a lot. I mentioned to you before we started the podcast, but I just moved into a new apartment like the first week of this quarantine. So I've been busy putting it together. But yeah, it's been great. I mean, not great. You know what I'm saying. It's been okay.
It's been as great as it can be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes. Well, it is always good to catch up with a former Jackrabbit, and delighted in your success, and always good to see you back in Brookings, and hopefully we'll be able to get together in the very near future.
For sure. That's the first thing I'm going to do when this pandemic is over, is I'm going to buy a flight to Pierre, because I am itching to get back to God's country, and hopefully I'll see you at a football game this fall.
Can't wait. Can't wait. That is Katie Lingle. I'm Tyler Merriam. Thank you for joining us on Keeping Up with the Jackrabbits.